This episode of Distraction is sponsored by Landmark College in Putney, Vermont, where targeted strategies and individualized personal development models help students to become their own advocates. Learn more at lcdistraction.org. Landmark College. Learn your way. Succeed uniquely.
I believe ordinary people change the world.
Yes.
And I don't care how much money you make, and I don't care, where you went to school. I'm not impressed. What impresses me is the power of a regular person to affect change in this world. And it's why I tell the stories of the mortician nobody knows or the artist in residence that no one even realizes is out there every day, is to remind people of their own power. History is not a bunch of dates and facts you memorize. History is a selection process, and it chooses every single one of us every single day. And the only question is, do you hear the call?
Hello, this is Dr. Ned Hallowell with an episode of Distraction. Today, I'm really thrilled to have a truly remarkable man on the show. Brad Meltzer is an author of incredible books. I mean, he's truly master of two genres. He does the thriller like nobody else does, and he has a new book coming out on March 6th called The Escape Artist. He has others in that vein, New York Times bestsellers, The Inner Circle, The House of Secrets, The President's Shadow, The Fifth Assassin, The Zero Game, The Book of Lies, The 10th Justice, Dead Even. They're all incredibly wonderful, spellbinding books. He's just the master of storytelling and just has a unique talent for holding a reader's suspense and attention. But he also has mastered the very difficult genre to master of children's books, and his series of I Am books are justifiably famous. I am Harriet Tubman, I am Martin Luther King Jr., I am George Washington, I am Abraham Lincoln, I am Gandhi, I am Helen Keller, I am Lucille Ball, and the latest one, I am Neil Armstrong. And he also has two books, Heroes for My Daughter and Heroes for My Son. I just ordered Heroes for My Daughter for my 10-year-old niece, Jocelyn, and I know she is going to absolutely love it. Our kids are growing up in an era where there aren't many heroes, and the heroes they adopt are not the ones we'd want them to adopt. People who are famous because they're rich or famous because they're good at a sport, and that's okay to be good at a sport. But I think we want them to have heroes that are other than just rich people or professional athletes. And Brad's books profile people who change the world in a wonderful way. As he puts it, ordinary people can change the world. And so Brad is a hero of mine, honestly, because of his gifts to us all. And it's truly a pleasure and an honor to welcome him to Distraction. Brad, thank you so much for taking time to be with us.
Thank you, and thanks for caring about the kids' books and even more important about the thrillers.
Yeah, well, they're amazing books. Tell us about the newest one, The Escape Artist, which comes out March 6th.
Yeah, so The Escape Artist is my newest thriller, and it centers around a woman named Nola. And Nola's dead. The government says she's dead. And her body is brought into the man, our hero in the book, who takes care of the government's and puts to rest the government's most top secret agents. He's a mortician of all things. And he knows Nola, wants to take care of her because he remembers that when Nola was younger, she was in Girl Scouts with his own daughter. He remembers that a campfire accident once took off the top part of her ear in the campfire. And so he pulls down the white sheet and he examines Nola's body, and he sees that the body in that ear is perfect. Confused, he runs the fingerprints and he realizes this isn't Nola. And he opens the body up, and there's a note hidden in the body. And the note says, Nola, you were right. Keep running. And there is where Zig finds out that Nola's still alive. She's out there and she's on the run. She's the escape artist. And from there, he has to figure out his way to not only protect her, but to figure out what she was really up to and who's trying to kill her. And it traces back through a conspiracy that leads to, of all places, back to Harry Houdini.
Oh.
Yeah, I found out, it was an amazing little detail, that there was a man named John Wilkie who a century ago was a magician, and he was put in charge of the Secret Service. It is the only time in U.S. history that a magician was in charge of the Secret Service, and he was a friend of Harry Houdini, too. And I love that detail. I'm like, you're telling me that one of Harry Houdini's friends ran the Secret Service and loved magic, and nobody knew about this? And so I used that old story to put it into the modern day part, and the escape artist is built around this conspiracy that happens then that's still being protected now.
Wow. Now, how did you concoct this plot? Does it begin with research? Does it begin with an idea? Where does this come from?
Yeah, all of my ideas always do come from research. So I was on a USO trip. The USO brings 6 authors, thriller writers, to go entertain our troops every year. And maybe 5 years ago, I went to the Middle East during the war. I think the war was winding down at that point, but we went to Kuwait and we went to Qatar and we went to all these amazing places to entertain the troops. And when I was there, I went because I wanted to say thank you for what the troops were doing for us, and very few of us ever get the chance. Right. But what I saw there and heard about was something called Dover Air Force Base. And Dover Air Force Base, it is where if you die in the military, that's where they send your body. And people in the military know this, but people like myself, I had no idea. And so, but what's also interesting is the biggest cases go there. So on 9/11, all the bodies from the Pentagon flight went to Dover. When the Challenger exploded, the bodies went there. Even when Jim Jones drank his Kool-Aid and all those people died, they all went to Dover too. Mass fatalities, and even from space shuttle explosions to 9/11 and back and forth, these amazing cases all go there. And what I found out is that unlike a normal mortuary, it's just very different there. The people who put bodies to rest there are true artists. Because if you get someone shoots you in the face and something, God forbid, happens in real life, they cover you with gauze, they close the casket, and they bury you.
Right.
But at Dover, it's very different. These are our sons and daughters who they're dealing with. And they know that most families, they don't even believe it happened until they can see their child. It's one of the hardest things in the world to deal with. So what they have to do is they sculpt with clay and they rebuild faces. They'll spend days rebuilding a cheekbone so that a mother can see her child one last time, or reconstructing a hand so they can hold their hand one last time.
Wow. And
these were the most amazing, we look at the government right now, which is such a chaotic mess. And however, there are real heroes still in the government, and these were some of them. They don't put in for overtime, some of these morticians, but they are true artists. Yes. And when I was doing the escape artist, I was like, I have to tell that story. And so I went to Dover, into Delaware, and...
How do you gain access to that?
Yeah, fair question. The truth is I called. I did what I always do. In the beginning, I used to have to talk my way in. But luckily, years ago, I got a letter from President Bush Sr. I got a letter from Bill Clinton saying he liked my books. And they helped me with research over the years. Wow. So I've had help with the FBI. I've had help from people that are at the Pentagon. I've had, you name the acronym, and I've gotten help from them. And so it's much easier now, after 20 years of doing this, people realize I write about the things I love. I write about the place where I've taken people into the secret tunnels below the White House. I've taken people into the hidden labyrinth that's below the U.S. Capitol. And when I do something like The Escape Artist, I want to show people what Dover's really like. I'm like, let me see what that's like. And when I went there, what was truly amazing to me was that the morticians there, he told me the story about this person who had, at a campfire, a soda can exploded and took off the top of someone's ear. And as soon as he said that story, I was like, I got the plot. I got it. I'm like, what if the person you're identifying is not the person, because he told me that when he works on people, if someone comes in with the name Hallowell, you want to work on that person, take care of them. If it's someone from your hometown, you want to take care of them. You want to make sure you do them right. If there was a Meltzer there, I'd want to take care of that person. Right. And I said, what if you went to take care of someone who you knew intimately and it wasn't that person whose body was there? And he said, that's a good idea. And I was like, I got it. I appreciate that. Let's go. And that's where the escape artist started, right? It's over.
Wow. So, and you describe Dover in the book? I mean, it's...
Yeah. So you see, not only do you see it, but you see exactly what they do there. And it's an amazing, incredible place. Wow. And I think for me, you can, what I was looking at, and I think, you in your job can appreciate is every book, for me, is usually about something that I'm dealing with in my own life. And one of the things I was realizing as I was hitting middle age was that just because you're alive doesn't mean that you're living. Yes. And that's just something that really stuck with me. After studying death for 3 years at Dover, you realize that only by being around all this death, you really appreciate what it means to be alive. Yeah. And that's what I was dealing with in my own life, is trying to kind of figure out how to, and why to keep going and why to keep pushing forward. And it was watching these amazing heroes who deal with the most top secret cases, When someone dies and they're a secret agent for the government, no one knows who, even their kids sometimes don't know what they did. But you better believe that the morticians at Dover know, because the bodies come in there and then have to secretly have their names changed and then their identities moved. And it's an amazing, amazing little detail of what happens there, from who they were in the field to who they are at home. And I was like, this is a building that's full of secrets. How could I not base a mystery there?
I can't wait to get this book.
And then the other part of it that's really fun, that we did a TV show on the History Channel called Brad Meltzer's Lost History, and the first episode we went searching for the 9/11 flag that the firefighters raised at Ground Zero. Yeah. And one of the things on that very first episode, when we were filming it, they took me to a place in Washington, D.C., a military base there. And the military base had had a museum with all these paintings in a military museum. It had like Adolf Hitler's paintings that he painted. Had all this artwork from the government. I was like, why do you have all this art? Why does the government and the Army have all this art? And they explained to me about a job there called the artist in residence. And what the artist in residence is since World War I, the U.S. Army has had an actual artist, a physical painter, who goes into disasters and paints what happens. So there was someone there at D-Day painting on 9/11. When 9/11 happened, one of the only artist, I should say, that got through the 9/11 security corridor was the artist in residence. So while everyone else is running out of the disaster, this artist in residence is running in and painting things. Is not armed with guns, but armed with colored pencils in their pocket. And I thought, that's the most amazing job I've ever heard. And it was a woman who had the job. And that's who Nola is in The Escape Artist, is she's the artist in residence. And what she's running to and what she's running from is obviously key to the plot. But I love the idea that there was this artist who could see things that no one else sees.
Absolutely. And you have a great interest in conspiracy. Your book, History Decoded, 10 Greatest Conspiracies of All Time. That's a wonderful book in its own right.
Yeah, no, I'm obsessed with history, because to me, history is not a bunch of The Escape Artist is a thriller. It's a mystery. But I love when I read a thriller when I learn something, even if it's made up. So if you're going to show me the president's private dining room, show me the real president's private dining room, which is what we do. If you want to see where some secret location is, show me the real one that the government uses. And a few years ago, I got a call from the Department of Homeland Security asking me to come in and brainstorm different ways that terrorists could attack the United States. And Ned, my first thought was, if they're calling me, we have bigger problems than anybody thinks. But
not at all. I think
why did they call me?
Yeah,
and I went in and we did it, and we would destroy a place like Boston. They would give us a target like Boston. They would pair me with a Secret Service agent and a chemist, and we would destrow a place like Boston in no time.
You're the logical person to call, Brad.
And I think the reason that they called me is because they read my books and they know that the research that I do for these books, it's real.
Yeah, exactly. It's perfect. It makes me gain confidence in them that they called you. You're the perfect person to imagine that. And trust me, I'm exactly. I feel the same way. If you tell me monkeys banging on typewriters will help make America safe again, I want to see a line item for monkeys and typewriters. Fund it. I just was the monkey on the typewriter. Hardly a monkey. All right. Well, we're going to pause the conversation right there for just a moment. On the phone with me now is Mac Gander, a professor at Landmark College, our wonderful sponsor in Putney, Vermont. Professor Gander is here to talk with us about some of the teaching methods he and the other educators at Landmark College employ to teach students who learn differently. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Gander.
Oh, it's a great honor, Dr. Hollowell. I'm glad to have the chance to talk. I think one of the things I always start with, and I think most of my colleagues do at Landmark, is with the fact that the students who come to us have been damaged by their educational experiences in the past, in large part because they haven't been understood and haven't really understood themselves. And so a lot of the work I do, and I mainly teach writing, has to do with helping students understand and really become competent as sort of managers of their own sense of self instead of having that imposed from the outside. And a lot of it is confidence boosting as well. I mean, there's so much evidence that if someone thinks they can do something, that they probably can, and if they don't think they can do it, then they probably won't. A lot of it comes down to being very clear about structures, having to do with things like deadlines, how to organize a paper, how to work writing through a process of steps. And that applies to studying for a science test or a math test as well. Having routines that become sort of personal habits, and that the student owns rather than being imposed from the outside, are really important. I really like to give students lots of different options for how to do things, because it really is true. Everybody learns differently.
Yeah, exactly. Well, your students are very lucky to have you and to have the whole resources of Landmark. Thank you, Professor Gander, so very much for joining us and for the ongoing work you and the faculty up there do.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hollowell. It's been a real pleasure for me.
Thank you. If you'd like to learn more about Landmark College, please go to lcdistraction.org. That's lcdistraction.org. Okay, now let's get back to the show. How old are you, Brad?
I am 47 years old.
Well, it amazes me that you were thinking midlife issues and am I really alive? I mean, I can't think of anyone who's more alive. That not only your amazing books, but you have a family and children you love and a wife you love. I don't see how anyone could be more alive.
Yeah, it's not like, there was a full-term crisis here, but it's, I think we just, all of us can get into our own ruts, right? You do stop. This was the 20th year since I've been a published writer. 20 years. I was lucky. My first book, even though my first book got 24 rejection letters. There were only 20 publishers. I got 24 rejection letters.
Wow.
Which means some people will write me twice to make sure I got the point. But I was published at 27 years old. I'm now 47 years old. And you gotta kind of look at back and say, what I do right, what I do wrong. 20 years is a time when you take stock and look, and that's what I was doing.
Which was your first book?
The 10th Justice.
That was your first book. Wow. And that became a bestseller, correct?
It did. My family bought a lot of copies.
Did you always want to be a writer when you were growing up?
I was lucky. I didn't. I had no idea. I was the first in my family to go to a 4-year college. So I had no idea that, writing was even a job that you could have.
Wow.
But for me, when I was in 9th grade, I had an English teacher who changed my life with 3 magic words. And she said, you can write. And Sheila Spicer said that to me in 9th grade. And I thought, well, everyone can write. And she said, no, you know what you're doing. And she tried to put me in the honors class, but I had some sort of conflict. So what she did is she said, here's what I'm going to do. You're going to sit in the corner for the entire year and ignore every homework and assignment I give. And you're going to do the honors work instead. And what she was really saying was, you're going to thank me later.
Yeah. And what a great teacher. Wow.
I know. And 10 years later, I went back to her classroom. I knocked on the door and I said, my name is Brad Meltzer, and I wrote this book, and it's for you. And I gave her my first published novel, The 10th Justice.
Wow.
And she, was crying. I said, why are you crying? She said, because I didn't think I was having an impact. I was going to retire this year.
Oh, boy.
And I said, are you kidding me? You have 30 students. We have 1 teacher.
Oh, boy.
And this woman had such an impact on my life, but had no concept of her legacy, no concept of that impact. And I think God knows sometimes what we leave behind.
Yeah. What's her name again?
Sheila Spicer.
Sheila Spicer. And what school was it?
At Highland Oaks Middle School in Florida, of all places.
So you grew up in Florida.
I did grow up I lived in Brooklyn, New York until I was 13. My dad lost his job at 39 years old, and he decided to have what he called the do-over of life. He had 2 kids, my mother and him. They had $1,200 to his name. He was always bad with money, and he started life over from scratch. And he said, we're going to start from scratch. And he started everything over. And that changed. He moved us down to Florida, and we got another chance at life. And it's, it was there that I found that English teacher, that I found my love of history, there that we raised our kids, and even started doing the kids' books, all came out of like that kind of big mission that my dad taught me all those years ago.
The mission being you can do anything?
Well, I don't know. I shouldn't even say mission, but it's a lesson. And it's my core beliefs. It's in everything I do. I believe ordinary people change the world, as you said at the start.
Yes.
And I don't care how much money you make, and I don't care, where you went to school. I'm not impressed. What impresses me is the power of a regular person to affect change in this world. And it's why I tell the stories of the mortician nobody knows, or the artist in residence that no one even realizes is out there every day, or even telling the stories that I tell in the kids' books, is to remind people of their own power. History is not a bunch of dates and facts you memorize. History is a selection process, and it chooses every single one of us every single day. And the only question is, do you hear the call?
Do you hear the call? Or Sheila Spicer, who had no idea that she was having such an impact, and those 3 words you can write, and then gave you the freedom and the space to do just that. And then you come back 10 years later and hand her a bestseller. No wonder she was crying. How many people are out there, ordinary people, who are changing the world who don't know it? I mean, your books are people we've all heard of, but what about the ones who don't even know it, like the Sheila Spicers?
Yeah, I mean, listen, let's be honest. And it's why I tell the stories in the kids' books. Is I could tell my daughter that Amelia Earhart flew across the Atlantic Ocean. And my daughter says, big deal, Dad, everyone flies across the Atlantic these days. She's not impressed. But if I tell my daughter this true story, that Amelia Earhart, when she was 7 years old, built a homemade roller coaster in her backyard. And she took a wooden crate and put roller skating wheels on the bottom of it, shoved it to the roof of her tool shed, and then came careening down the side on 2 giant 2x4s, flies through the air, crashes, and realizes that she loves this, flying. That's the first moment she flies. It's actually when she's 7. Yeah. My daughter's listened to that story. She's like, oh, my gosh, Amelia Earhart's bold, and she's daring. She's amazing. And now Amelia Earhart is alive again. So that's what we did. While I do my thrillers and love things like The Escape Artist, I started writing these kids' books for my own kids because I was tired of them looking at reality TV show stars and loudmouth athletes and thinking that that's something that, is something to look up to. That's not a hero. That's fame.
Right,
and we all know being famous is very different than being a hero. So we started with I'm Amelia Earhart and I'm Abraham Lincoln. We did I'm Rosa Parks and Albert Einstein. My son loves sports. So I did I'm Jackie Robinson for him to show him what a real sports hero looks like. It's not someone who makes millions of dollars and scores points.
Right.
It's someone who helps someone else. And we did I'm Lucille Ball, so that my daughter could have a female entertainment hero who wasn't just famous for being thin and pretty. That Lucy stands for the idea it's okay to be different. That's the best part of who we are. And we did I'm Helen Keller and put real Braille in the book. It says, close your eyes. This is my name. Feel these dots. My name's Helen. What's your name? And we have kids. My 16-year-old, even though he's older for the book, reads that book and is like, Dad, this is the one. And we've done, what's really amazing that is we've done George Washington. We did I Am Martin Luther King Jr. I Am Jim Henson. And we just did I Am Harriet Tubman, came out a couple weeks ago. But to me, what is so vital about it is that since Donald Trump has been elected in the last year, since the election was really approaching, I should say, we've seen the heroes like Dr. King and George Washington take off. Wonderful. And it wasn't a Republican versus Democrat thing. It was that parents on both sides and grandparents on both sides were tired of looking at the TV and seeing politicians. What they wanted to show their kids were leaders. And we all know there's a difference between a leader and a politician. Yes. And I love that parents and grandparents are taking their books. And it's not about saying, I want I Am Harriet Tubman or I want I Am Abraham Lincoln or George Washington or Amelia Earhart. But what they're doing is they're building a library of real heroes for their kids and their grandkids and their nieces and nephews.
Yes. And for kids to know that indeed ordinary people can change the world and do change the world. And like you said, there's such a difference between a hero and a famous person,
for sure.
And boy, Brad, you're doing so much good. Not only are you entertaining us with your thrillers, you're teaching us. And, that's the ancient wisdom. Horace, the Latin poet, said poetry instructs by pleasing. And that's why it's superior to philosophy. Philosophy merely instructs, but poetry instructs by pleasing. And that's what you do. That's what your books do. You draw us in with suspense or a story like Amelia Earhart, and then you teach us. And that's the best kind of teaching is teaching that grabs the emotions.
I appreciate it. I mean, listen, this is. I think the only authentic story you can ever tell is your own story. Mm-hmm. It's just my own story. It's not heroic. It's just my own story. We are all of us terrified and brave and amazing and scared and incredible. And all of us, as you know, sometimes in the exact same day, in the exact same hour. And for me, that's my own story. I just tell it, and I know one thing. If I've learned one thing in 20 years, Ned, it's I'm not that special. If I'm having these feelings and these emotions and these wants and these dreams for my kids, then there are a lot of other people out there having them too. And it's the same thing with the thrillers. I know that, I'm built like a regular, ordinary person, so I write for myself, and people like the world that I get to take them into because I try and find things no one's ever heard of. And it's been really fun for me to be able to explore that.
Well, it's fun for us to have you. I can tell you that. It's you're a wonderful tour guide, a wonderful storyteller, a wonderful wordsmith, and I love your humility, saying you're not that special. And And I love your line, we're all terrified and brave. I mean, it's we all are flesh and blood, that's for sure. But you have a wonderful way of bringing life to a level of vividness that few people can do. And
I'll wait till you read The Escape Artist. It's you'll see it's a real. I mean, it's not even about the page. What's been fun for me is watching people react to this character. So we've had friends like Harlan Coben gave a blurb that said, not since the girl with the dragon tattoo have you seen a character like this. And this character of Nola, look out, Nola is coming.
Okay, all right. Nola is coming. 3 more words that will change lives. Brad, I can't thank you enough for joining us. Nola is coming in The Escape Artist and due out March 6th, a new wonderful thriller from Brad Meltzer, and a wonderful man. You are a hero in my eyes, and I think many of our listeners. The Escape Artist, remember that, The Escape Artist, and you can advance order it on Amazon. You can learn more about Brad at his website, Brad Meltzer, meltzer.com. Just can't thank you enough, Brad.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks so very much to Brad Meltzer. I loved what he had to say about how he writes and how he takes readers to places that they'd love to see but can't gain access to, and then his amazing ability to tell a story and weave a plot. It's wonderful. As I said, if you'd like to learn more about Brad, go to his website, Brad Meltzer, meltzer.com. And please keep sending your comments and show ideas to us. We need them. We grow from them. They really feed and grow the show. Connect at distractionpodcast.com. That's where to send them. Connect, the word connect, at distractionpodcast.com. Or you can call us at 844-55-CONNECT. That's 844-55-CONNECT. And leave us a message.
Hey guys, it's Sarah here, producer on Distraction. Just a heads up that we have a new sister podcast out, the Royal Wedding Podcast with Rob Shooter, bringing you news, updates, and interviews every week leading up to the noble nuptials. So go to royalweddingpodcast.com and subscribe.
Distraction is produced by Collisions, the podcast division of CRN International. Collisions, podcasts for curious people. Today's show was recorded by Pat Keogh and mixed by Scott Person. And our producer, of course, is the inimitable and wonderfully talented Sarah Gurton.